Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host Anthony Sassano, and it's the 31st of January 2024. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So apologies for missing yesterday's episode everyone. I just ran out of time to record it honestly, and it got pretty late and I was pretty tired, so I basically said, well, I'll just give today a miss and make up for it tomorrow being today. There's a lot to get through, so I wanted to jump right into it. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about today was related to the spot ETH ETFs. Now I think I talked about this either last week or the week before, gave a little bit of an update around this, but there was an article that the block published today, an exclusive they had, where they quoted Standard Chartered Bank saying that the SEC is likely to approve the spot Ethereum ETFs on May 23rd, which is that first final deadline for the issuers, as I've been discussing on the Refuel before. Now, for those of you who don't know, Standard Chartered is one of the biggest banks in the world, but at the same time, we commonly see a lot of these kind of, I guess, analysts from these banks say things like this, and it's not just about the ETFs. They sometimes say, okay, we're bullish on, this coin, or we're bullish on crypto, or we're bearish on crypto, we're for such and such reason. And a lot of the time, it's just, the analysis can be based on like reality and based on fact, but a lot of the time, it's the same thing that you see within crypto, and people give their analysis of things or give their predictions on things. They're just predictions, right? They're not anything that you can kind of look at with any sort of guarantee of it happening. Now, in saying that, when it comes to the spot ETH ETFs, I have said before that I think that the chance of the spot ETH ETFs getting approved by May is quite good, but I would put the chance at like the same as the ETF guys, maybe around 60-70%. And the reason for that is because with the BTC one, we had, I guess, like a lot of precedent of it getting denied for a very long time, and then just a build up over time of confidence in it to get them to the point where they're like, okay, there's a 90% chance that the SEC approves this, and those chances really went up after Grayscale won in court. If you actually look at a lot of the hype around the BTC spot ETFs, it started mostly in October, but BlackRock filed for the ETF in June. So in October, BTC, I think it was late October, BTC broke out of its 30k range and then just went up only from there, and it was pretty relentless up only until obviously the spot ETFs were approved. But it wasn't starting from June. There was a pump up to 30k, but then it sold back down to 25k. So it didn't actually break that range until late October. And I think let me have a look. Grayscale versus SEC. I can't remember exactly when Grayscale won this. They won it in October. That's right. Yeah. So that's why we saw the pump there, because everyone suddenly got very confident in the SEC approving these things because of the fact that they lost that court case to Grayscale over GBTC, obviously. Now, this time around, we don't have that with ETH, where Grayscale is not suing the SEC over ETH, but we do have the precedent. We have the precedent that if the SEC was to deny the spot ETH ETFs, it's highly likely that they would get sued, not just by Grayscale, but probably by other issuers. And those issuers would basically say, hey, you approved the BTC spot ETFs and you based on the fact that you can't not approve them if you have if they have the product already has futures ETFs, and the same is true for ETH, right? So when you look at it like that, ETH has the precedent that it can kind of fall back on now. But the arguments against, and there's actually a thread that I shared the Daily Gwei Discord channel, a Twitter thread from a lawyer who basically gave. So he wasn't saying that it's not going to get approved, but he gave the reasons why or how the SEC could deny these things. So he basically runs through all of the arguments the SEC could use if they deny this thing that may or may not open themselves up to lawsuits. And a lot of the arguments are very kind of esoteric and very, I guess, like on the edge of what you could argue to deny one of these things. It's more like reaching, I guess, I would call it, than anything else. But if Gary Gensler wants to be petty, like he has been historically, then that's the way he would do it. Now, in saying that as well, though, you have to actually take into account the wider context here and the wider context around the political landscape, because this year is an election year in the US, right? Gary Gensler is a Democrat. He is at the behest of Democrats like Elizabeth Warren and obviously, the president. But at the same time, do they want to push the issue? Do they want to get even more bad press for the SEC, which is bad press for the Democrats, in a critical election year? Because, definitely this election is one of the most critical in the US's history from what I've read about it. I don't follow politics too closely, but it seems like a pretty big deal. So would the SEC just approve these things in order to avoid all of that, right? Because at the end of the day, when you want to win an election, you need to basically do everything you can to get as many votes as possible. And I do think that there are going to be a lot, it's not going to be a huge number of people, but there are going to be a significant number of people that will definitely vote based on just crypto-related policies here, because crypto is such a big part of their lives. It's their whole livelihood. It's their whole career. And I think at this point, it's very clear that when it comes to crypto, the Democrats aren't very friendly towards them. At least the high-ranking Democrats aren't, and they're openly hostile, I should say, towards them. Now, will the Republicans be better? I don't know. I mean, people speculate they'll be better, but at the end of the day, it goes back to how it sucks that the US only really has two options here. But when you look at it, people would be basically vote based on, well, we know the Democrats are really hostile towards crypto. Let's take a chance with the Republicans and vote for them. So and there are people who are going to be single issue voters based on that. So I do think the wider context here matters, but we will know as we get closer to that May 23rd deadline what the chances look like. Because if, say, the SEC starts doing a lot of back and forth with the issuers like they did with the issuers for the BTC spot ETFs, then the chances start going up, because they're not going to do a lot of back and forth like that if they plan to deny it. So the chances creep up to, from 60 to 70%, then potentially to 80%, and then maybe we get to that 90% number based on whatever. It's February now, right? So you got February, March, April. You got 3 months worth, and most of May worth of stuff that could happen to change the odds here. And if you actually look at prediction markets, I think they give the odds basically 50-50 from what I've seen. And I guess that makes sense. It's basically a coin toss of whether this is going to get approved or not. But as we get closer and closer to the date, you're going to see those odds shift based on various different, news that comes out during the lead up to this. So I'll obviously keep you guys updated on all of this, but my odds remain the same, 70%-ish of this getting approved. I've given the reasons before about why I think that there's a strong chance that it can get approved. But I also understand that there are arguments to be made about how these could be denied, and at the end of the day, it wouldn't be denied forever. Like I reckon that if they denied it in May, it could still potentially happen in 2024 because the BlackRock deadline I think is August or something like that, or it could happen in 2025. Like I really do think that the window of from where it gets denied to when it gets approved, it'd be very small. It wouldn't be like years and years and years worth of waiting here. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, right now the odds are not the same as they were for the BTC spot ETFs, but that could change very quickly as we approach these deadlines here. But yeah, as I said, I'll keep you guys updated on this, but definitely a major thing to kind of monitor over the coming months. All right, speaking of major things to monitor over the coming months, Dencun is getting closer and closer. So as you guys probably know by now, Dencun was activated on the Sepolia testnet today and everything went smoothly. I didn't see any issues at all being reported with any of the clients. So blobs are now flowing on the Sepolia testnet. And as Parathosh said here, uneventful testnet forks are the best ones. And of course they are, because when they're uneventful and nothing really happens, it's a good feeling that you know that this is, you've kind of like dotted your I's and crossed your T's and stuff like that. But at the same time, I would also argue that finding things that are wrong in testnets is something that you want to happen as well, because let's just say in the testnets nothing goes wrong, and then a bug happens on mainnet, you would have rather found it in the testnet. And these are these things that we call unknown unknowns, where you actually don't know what could go wrong, and it could just happen, and it's like an edge case that you can't account for, and then it doesn't happen on the testnets, but happens later on mainnet. This has actually happened a couple of times in the past, and it's almost guaranteed to happen at some point in the future again, just given the fact that bugs are unavoidable, but that's again why we have client diversity and things like that, right? To protect against these things. But yeah, I mean, Dencun is getting much closer now, guys. I mean, I'm still sticking to my March timeline here, like mid to late March timeline. Like if Holski, however you want to pronounce it, goes smoothly, which is next on Feb 7th, then I see no reason for the core devs not to schedule the mainnet kind of fork about a month from there. And yeah, that could, I mean, as I said, the earliest could be early March. It could push us into mid-March. Late March would be surprising, so I'm more coalescing around kind of that mid-March point now. But yeah, we'll have to see what gets decided on after the whole Holski testnet here, and see where the date actually happens here. But very, very close now. I mean, if it happens in mid-March, it's only 6 weeks away, guys. Like, it's going to happen before you know it. I remember saying the same thing about that merge. Like, there was such a huge lead up to the merge. It's a huge build-up, years and years of build-up. Same with ERP 1559, and then it happened, and we move on to the next thing. This is the beautiful thing about Ethereum, I think, is that we don't just, like, sit in one place and stagnate and basically keep kind of, like, waxing poetically about the really cool things that we did in the past. Like, yes, it gets brought up up. Yes, we talk about it and we learn from it, but Ethereum keeps moving forward. And that's always what's attracted me to Ethereum. One of the main things that's attracted me to Ethereum is the fact that we keep moving forward. Because I see in other ecosystems, specifically within Bitcoin, they live in the past a lot because Bitcoin as an ecosystem is not necessarily moving forward in the same way as Ethereum is. Like there's no major changes being made to the Bitcoin protocol itself. There are some things here and there, like the ordinal stuff, right? But that divides the community and it creates another mess here and there. But in terms of like the actual protocol, it kind of stagnates. And a lot of the Bitcoiners, they love just waxing poetically about the past and what happened in the past. And they love all of the history of Bitcoin, because really when you're looking forward, I mean, besides the price going up and with that, people holding Bitcoin, and if you want to call that adoption, you can call that adoption. There's no like protocol upgrades to look forward to. There's no major things like that to look forward to. Whereas in Ethereum there is, and that works for Bitcoin. That's what they want Bitcoin to be. I'm not trying to say that that's necessarily a negative thing, but for me, like I couldn't be in that ecosystem for very long. I would get very, very bored. Even with the ordinal stuff, I would just be like, well, this stuff just seems like an inferior version of what we have on Ethereum and other smart contract chains. Why do I care about this? And I understand people care about it for speculative reasons as well, but at this point in my crypto journey, I'm like way past the speculative side of things. I mean, I've been in crypto technically since 2013, so it's been like 11 years now. And if you want to count it from 2017, it's been 7 years. I'm just way past that point, and I really just want to focus on the tech. I want to focus on the evolving tech, and things like Dencun and other upgrades. They just get me so excited. But once they've actually been put into the network, I look forward to the next thing because I just want to keep moving forward. I don't want to stagnate. I don't want to sit in one spot, and that's what I've always loved about Ethereum. So yeah, I'll keep you guys updated on the progress here. But I think the next update will just be the whole Sky testnet, which, as I said, happens next week, and then after that we'll hopefully have a mainnet date for Blobs, for EIP 4844, and some other EIPs that are coming as part of Dencun. All right, so Tim Biko has introduced something called the Protocol Guild Pledge, which is basically an initiative to get projects to pledge 1% of their native tokens to the Protocol Guild. Now, you guys know what the Protocol Guild is. It's basically an on-chain kind of treasury that gets streamed to Ethereum core protocol contributors, whether they be developers or researchers, over time. And there is currently 152 of these people, and the pot consists of, or the treasury, I should say, consists of like ETH and other tokens. And really the initiative now is to basically get every project built on Ethereum to issue 1% of their tokens to the Protocol Guild. Now, it doesn't have to happen all at once. It can be streamed over time, but the goal is really to get 1% of their native tokens issued to the Protocol Guild. Now, this has been the goal, I think, since day one, but as you guys know, the Protocol Guild has gone through a pilot period where they wanted to keep things relatively small in order to test the waters and see if this thing worked, and it's worked, I think, beyond even, Tim and Trent Van Epps, who are the two of the leads of the Protocol Guild here, beyond their expectations. So they're kind of ramping this up to the next level now with the Protocol Guild Pledge to get teams to sign up to donate 1% of their native tokens. Now, there have been teams that have donated tokens to the Protocol Guild already. Arbitrum and Optimism, I think, have, and there's a few others out there. I don't know off the top of my head what the percentage is, but it has been millions of dollars, so it's not, it hasn't been nothing. But also today, EtherFi announced that they're actually donating 1% of their token to the Protocol Guild, which is really, really great to see. And EtherFi continues to be one of the most aligned Ethereum projects, which is great. And this is actually a really great way to show alignment to Ethereum, right? Giving 1% of your native tokens to the Protocol Guild, because it essentially means that you value the Ethereum core devs and researchers, you value the work that they do, and you want to make sure that that work keeps getting done at a really high quality bar, because it also helps your project, right? And this is one thing that separates the Ethereum ecosystem from pretty much every other ecosystem, is that we recognize the need for long-term in sustainability for core developers, right, and for core researchers. And we recognize that organizations like the Ethereum Foundation are central points of failure. Organizations like Consensus are central points of failure. These organizations that have traditionally funded these things. And yes, they're going to keep funding them into the future, but we need something that is, I wouldn't say it's like fully credibly neutral, but we need something that like as close to credibly neutral as possible, and we need something as sustainable as possible. And when I talk about sustainability here, I'm talking on the orders of decades, if not, like, I know it may sound crazy for me to say this, but if not centuries, because that's really what could happen here, is where essentially just have basically all of these projects giving 1% of their token supply to the protocol guild over decades, if not centuries, and the core protocol continues to be maintained and developed without having to basically rely on third-party funding, rely on centralized funding and stuff like that. So that's, to me, what separates the Ethereum ecosystem from a lot of others, because off the top of my head, I don't know of any other ecosystem that has anything like this. Pretty much every other layer one is funded directly by its respective foundation, which is completely fine, I think. I'm not going to knock that, because the Ethereum Foundation has funded Ethereum development for a very long time and still continues to do that. But if you want to become a long-term sustainable protocol in the order of decades, if not centuries, then you need to decentralize that funding. You need to create a sustainable funding mechanism, and it needs to come from within the ecosystem. It can't rely on third parties. It can't rely on outside the ecosystem. It needs to come from within. And that's exactly what the Protocol Guild is doing here. So you can go check this out, the Protocol Guild pledge, for yourself. I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so Mike Nutter has published another ETH research post all about inclusion lists. So this one is titled Unconditional Inclusion Lists, and you guys will remember that inclusion lists is one of Ethereum's ways of tackling censorship on the network, basically giving power back to the validators in the MEV boost or PBS pipeline, where essentially in that pipeline you have the builders and you have the relays and then you have the validators. Now the validators are the group that censors the least, whereas the builders are the group that censor the most, and the relays are in the middle. So we basically want to essentially shift that so that the validators are back in control, the proposers of the blocks are back in control of the censorship of Ethereum here. Now, I believe this is a very good candidate for going into Petra in the next Ethereum upgrade. And I believe that this may actually end up pushing out other EIPs. And from some of the stuff that I've been seeing recently, it's too early to tell, but from some of the stuff that I've been seeing recently, I think that the core devs and a lot of the community seem to be more in favor of inclusion lists than something like the max effective balance increase. Because when it comes to what Ethereum is uniquely positioned to provide value on, censorship resistance is right at the top. Like, Ethereum is very uniquely positioned to that, because as I've mentioned before, if any of these other networks got OFAC sanctioned, I think that they would do very, very poorly. I think that they would actually approach 100% censorship because of the fact that they don't have a robust node operator set like Ethereum does, where essentially we can fall back to the validators for censorship resistance here. Now, as the way it's currently designed in Ethereum, because most people use MEV boost, we don't have that. But with this inclusion list upgrade, or with inclusion list EIP, we can kind of flip the switch back and basically give the power back to the validators here. So yeah, the argument is being made that, okay, the max effective balance increase is important, but if we can't do both, like if you had to choose one between inclusion lists and and I'll just say MEB for short, then I think we're probably going to err on the side of inclusion lists here. Now, at the same time, like, I understand that, but my own personal preference is that obviously we have both. I mean, they're both wildly different things. Like, I mean, the max effective balance increase is like the pros for that are completely different from the pros of inclusion lists, right? They both serve Ethereum layer 1 and strengthen some of the stuff around it, but they're both good in their own way. So for me to choose between them, I actually can't choose between them, honestly. Like, if someone held a gun to my head, it'd be very hard for me to choose between them, but I would just choose one because I wouldn't want to get shot in the head. But you get what I'm saying. But in terms of some people saying that max effective balance increase isn't that important, I've seen some people say that. I would actually very much disagree with that. I think it's critically important. And you remember that EIP that was kind of rushed in to cap the validator churn limit on the network. You remember my objections to that EIP, where I basically said that the logic being used to put this EIP in is unsound. There's not been enough research done on this, and it makes no sense. And the number one reason was because it was assumed that the validator entry queue would stay like full, permanently, which it hasn't. It's basically been zero for quite a while now. And I remember calling this out a lot. And I remember at the time, the core devs were like kind of clutching their pearls, being like, oh my God, if we don't put in this churn limit freeze, then we're going to overload the network, and then the network's going to fall over, and it's just going to be really bad. But now it doesn't, it seems like people are saying that the max effective balance increase, which is the actual fix to this issue because it consolidates validators down, we don't have to worry about overloading the network anymore. It seems like people are all of a sudden like, okay, well, it's not as important as we once thought, which Okay, if it's in the context of, I guess, like the network falling over, yeah, that's actually correct. But it just annoys me a little bit because I called this out months ago and I was ignored. Like I yelled about this and I was kind of ignored on this, and people actually told me that I was overreacting to it. When in reality, I think I was not overreacting to it. I think I was actually on the ball with it, and it just proves like even more that I was on the ball with it now, where it isn't a rush to get this in. The network's not going to fall over. I don't expect there to be like a mass influx of validators anytime soon. But obviously, if the market heats up and there's lots of MEV to be extracted, maybe that changes. But I don't know. Like as I said when I discussed this months ago, I just didn't see a reason for this to happen. But anyway, enough on that. That's a little bit of a rant. Something I had to get off my chest. That was something that was bugging me over the last few days. I just wanted to get off my chest. But if you want to look at the latest design of inclusion lists, this is it. So you can go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But if I had to put money on which EIP would go in, if we had to choose between inclusion lists and max effective balance increase, for Petra, I should say, I would put my money on inclusion lists. It just seems like something that more people are interested in getting into the network if they had to choose between the two. So yeah, I'd put my money on inclusion lists. But in terms of what I want to see go in Petra, it's both of them. Maybe we can do both of them. I don't know. But I understand that with the MEB EIP, there are a lot of moving parts to it. There are a lot of considerations to basically work through, and there's a lot of testing that would need to be done. So if that gets pushed out to next year, so be it. I mean, it's still going to come eventually. I'm a patient guy, but I would have liked to have seen them both in Petra. But as I said, if we have to choose, inclusion lists definitely are critically important because Ethereum is, one of Ethereum's unique value props is that it is a censorship resistant network, the most censorship resistant network, I believe, in crypto. Alright, so EtherFi has announced their advisory board. Now, of course, you guys know, or maybe you don't know, but I mentioned it the other day that I am an advisor to EtherFi now. You can see here they listed me as an ETH maxi, which is funny. I guess like that's totally accurate, but I just thought it was funny. But they've also got Sandeep from Polygon here, James Smith from the Ethereum Foundation, Mike Arrington from Arrington Capital, and a secret advisor. I don't know who that is either, to be honest. Like, I didn't even know any of the other advisors until it was announced here. But yeah, I'm an advisor to EtherFi now, so do keep that in mind when I'm talking about EtherFi, guys. Like, I'm gonna you guys know I always try to not be biased towards teams that I'm advising or invested in, but there may be just kind of unconscious bias that I'm not aware of. So please keep in mind that I am an advisor to EtherFi now. But also generally, when it comes to like anything I talk about on the Refuel, 90% of the time, I'm actually either an advisor or an investor in that project, or I've at least talked to that project or helped them out with something. And also, I'm biased towards wanting to see the Ethereum ecosystem succeed generally. So I don't know. Maybe you guys can let me know if you think that I'm being too biased towards projects or not when I'm covering them. But yeah, I try my best not to be biased towards things. But in saying that, I'm excited to be part of this advisory board here. You know, from all my discussions with the EtherFi team and all my interactions with them, they've been stellar. Like, I've loved working alongside them. I've loved talking to them. They are definitely extremely Ethereum aligned, and they have been rock stars at basically growing their protocol. I mean, they have over $500 million of TVL now. They've definitely found the gap in the market and filled it, and they've definitely played it really well. And they've definitely increased competition across the LST or LRT space here, which I really, really like. And of course, it's not just EtherFi, it's others out there too. I mean, there are plenty of protocols spinning up, there's plenty of LST protocols spinning up and doing these things, doing vampire attacks on Lido, which I love to see. Because if you recall, like a year ago or even longer than that, when people were discussing Lido's dominance, I always stuck to my thought that Lido's dominance would only both stop going up and come down through competition. And that has been true, I think, for a long time now, where competition has come online, it's taken ETH that otherwise would have gone into Lido, and it's taken it into these apps, whether it be EtherFi or Swell or, you know, others coming online like Puffer, for example. So it's gone into these things, and it's taken it away from Lido. Lido is still the same percentage market share as it was almost 2 years ago, but that's on a relative basis, which is okay. I think it's okay that they're still at the same. But now, obviously, the mission is to continue this pressure, continue vampire attacking them, continue getting more and more ETH into these other protocols to take away from Lido's dominance here, which is what they're doing with their vampire attacks and things like that. So great to see that playing out. Great to see that people either listened to me or my thesis played out that more competition would lead to, lead to better outcomes than just yelling into the void. The social layer is really strong, guys. I've talked about this countless times on the Refuel. It's really strong, but it's not a silver bullet. It is not a panacea. It is not going to fix every issue. The social layer alone is definitely not going to fix the issue of state concentration. And honestly, the social layer alone doesn't fix client diversity either. What it does is it pushes things in the direction that we want them to go in, or at least attempt to push them in that direction. But it requires actions at the end of the day. Talking is one thing, actions are another. But the social layer pushes those actions and pushes them forward, and it has different effects in different parts of the ecosystem. Obviously, client diversity is easier than stake diversity because there's not really direct economic incentives involved with this, and there's not really that kind of like liquidity begets liquidity effect involved with client diversity, because as I've explained before, if you're on 100% Geth, it's really easy to switch over to 50%, never mind 50% Geth, for example, because even as a large operation, it isn't much work to do that. Like you should have an existing pipeline where you can do these things. And even if you don't, building that pipeline isn't exactly very difficult. But to get people to move like a lot of liquidity, like billions of dollars from one protocol that's been around for a long time that they're used to, that they have no problems with, by the way, to another protocol takes financial incentives. So a lot of people moving from, let's say, STETH or from Lido to other protocols are doing so based on financial incentives a lot of the time. They're doing so to go, farm an airdrop or to participate in restaking, things like that. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's the thing. We can do a direct financial incentive there. We can't do that. So that needs to be done. And we can't do that with client diversity. But with client diversity, we have the luxury of the fact that we don't need to do that, right? And there is actually a pretty hefty penalty for running a majority client if there was a bug, or supermajority client if there was a bug, which acts as an incentive, but it's not like a direct incentive. But anyway, enough about client diversity. I've talked too much about that recently, but yeah, great to see EtherFi's advisory board finally publicly announced here. Now, I did mention Swell. They also had a big update over, I think this was yesterday, where they introduced their liquid restaking token rswETH or rswETH. So it's restaked Swell ETH. It lets you earn pearls, which is their point system. It lets you earn eigenlayer points and future restaking rewards while still enjoying the freedom to participate in DeFi. So it's very similar, I think, to what EtherFi has been doing recently, but now you have that option with Swell. Swell has also been absolutely killing the game over the last year or so with their pearls program. With the way they've been doing things, I've really enjoyed that as well. And I'm going to disclose this. You guys already know this, but I'm going to disclose it again. I'm an investor and advisor in Swell as well. So just keep that in mind. But I've just been a huge fan of them. Aussie-based team here as well, which is always a bonus for me. But yeah, if you're interested in participating in them and interested in kind of like participating in their ecosystem, you can go check out this link here, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But great to see them finally launch this year. I know that's been in the works for quite a while now. All right, so last up here on the staking front is I just wanted to highlight something from Rocketpool. So this wasn't a tweet or anything, but someone in the Daily Gwei Discord channel asked the question relating to what I said the other day about how Rocketpool is going to potentially allow node operators to spin up validators without having to use the RPL as collateral. Now, this has been probably the biggest issue I think that people have had with Rocketpool, is that you had to bring ETH and RPL if you wanted to be a node operator. Now, if you want to see the latest proposal around this, then you should definitely check out this one that I'll link in the YouTube description below. But this is a proposal from Valdorf here that goes through basically completely rethinking the way that the RPL token exists or interacts with the Rocketpool ecosystem and how it accrues value as well. So you can go give this a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But the reason I bring this up is because Rocketpool is, I guess, like a protocol that's been around for a while now, and it gets less talked about because it's not doing like, degen, like liquid restaking points things, because the RPL token already exists, right? It's not something that people can farm. There are going to be incentives and things like that, obviously, coming out and dripping out slowly, especially with these changes that they're going to be making here. But essentially, I'm very excited to see the fact that node operators will not have to basically stake RPL alongside their ETH in order to be a node operator, because that will increase efficiency across the board. That will hopefully increase Rocketpool's market share, because I love the fact that Rocketpool is almost 3% right now, and maybe they don't grow much from here in terms of percentage market share. I don't know. I think they will, but like even if they didn't, having a real market share growth in terms of like more ETH staked with them and more node operators coming online is very, very healthy for the network, right? Because even if their network share remains at 3%, but like let's just say 100 more node operators come online, that is a net positive for the ecosystem. Because if Lido's dominance stays at 32%, right? And stays there for quite a while, and they've only and they had like 29 or something node operators for a while, and then they increased it to 38. They only added another 9 node operators, right? So, but their market share is huge, and their market share has stayed the same here, but they're only added 9 node operators. Whereas with Rocketpool, even if the market share stays the same, they could potentially add hundreds of new node operators, which is much better for the decentralization of the network. And also, obviously, if you want to take it to its logical extreme, with Coinbase being a single node operator, their market share going up doesn't really add anything. I actually think Coinbase's market share going up is only good for Coinbase. It is not good for the beacon chain. So really, we need to encourage people to stake with something like Rocketpool or run their own nodes, right? Or stake with these other smaller services just to get more node operators on the network. I want to see, tens of thousands of solo node operators or home node operators on the network. I don't think we're at that point now. I think we're at a few thousand, if I had to say, at most, definitely. I'm probably overestimating there, but in terms of home stakers or home node operators, I want to see that get to tens of thousands. I know hundreds of thousands is probably unrealistic, but maybe we will get there as well. But tens of thousands of unique node operators is more than enough, I think, in terms of protecting Ethereum's decentralization and making it so that Ethereum is as distributed as possible. And also, I want to see those distributed around the world. I don't want to see them just concentrated in like the US and Europe. I want to see them in Asia. I want to see them in the Middle East. I want to see them in Africa. I want to see them in Australia, obviously, and other parts around the world. I want to see node operators everywhere. And the only way we can do that is by lowering the barriers to entry, as I discussed the other day when I went on my staking rant for like 17 minutes. The only way we can do that is by lowering the barriers to entry, and there's much more to it than just lowering the ETH requirements, right? But lowering the ETH requirement is obviously the major part of it, and doing things like within Rocketpool, where you remove the need to speculate on the RPL token. If all you want to do is be a node operator, that is a huge boon as well. So you can go read this. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so Gasless DNSSEC is now live on the Ethereum mainnet. So what does this mean in plain English terms? Well, this means that within the ENS ecosystem, you can now use a TLD that you already kind of own, such as like .cat and .dog or .google or .gmail. So you could have, like, from my understanding, I could have like Sassal.dog, or maybe for those of you in the Daily Gwei Discord channel, you'll get this reference. You can have grackattack.dog. That'd be funny. But yeah, I mean, this is now enabled on mainnet. I think it's available to everyone now, which is really cool to see. If you want to learn more about this, Nick has a whole thread about this. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to kind of look here. But essentially, this has been a long time coming, I think. And as it says here, it's gasless as well, which is always good, because I think gas fees have been one of the main blockers for ENS for a lot of people, because of the fact that obviously you can only do it at layer 1, and they're doing like layer 2 integrations as well. But because of that, like, it prices out a lot of people, and it actually is kind of heavy with gas because of the fact that it's not just like a simple token transfer. It is a smart contract interaction, but those barriers of entry are slowly being eroded there. So it's just great to see this now live. But I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to go check out. All right, so I just wanted to put this POAP on your radar, everyone. So this is a POAP celebrating the launch of Smoothly. I believe all the proceeds from this POAP go to the Smoothly pool. So if you just go to the thing here and mint it, or the link here and mint it, I'll link it in the YouTube description below. The minting fees, all of them go to the Smoothly pool, which then gets distributed to all of the validators, all the solo validators that are part of the Smoothly pool there. So just wanted to put that on your radar. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to go check out. All right, finally here, there is now a public Dune dashboard available for Farcaster data. So if you're interested in tracking the rise of Farcaster and basically its meteoric growth that it's been going through lately, you can now check out this Dune dashboard. Now, I am making a very concerted effort to be more active on Farcaster because there are so many good conversations happening on there. There are a lot of good people on there that are way more active on there than they are on Twitter. And I actually saw a tweet, or I shouldn't say a tweet, a cast on Farcaster from Trent Van Epps today, where he basically was replying to, I think Eric Connor got on Farcaster and said that, is anyone else concerned that we're splitting the community between the Ethereum community between Twitter and Farcaster? And then Trent said, well, no, we're not necessarily splitting it for the long term. What we're doing is that we're trying to migrate over to Farcaster from crypto Twitter, because crypto Twitter just became a total mess, right? It's just grifters, scammers galore. So yes, crypto Twitter is still bigger right now, or even Ethereum Twitter is still bigger. But if we all move over to Farcaster, then we can just migrate the whole community over. And also, Farcaster is crypto native. It's Web3 native. It's much better than Twitter when it comes to integrations that it has within crypto, when it comes to things like security and also long-term plans around decentralization, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm going to make a really big effort to use Farcaster more. I'm still going to be using both because there's still a lot of stuff that gets posted on Twitter. Twitter's still the town square for now, but I did like the way Trent framed it as a migration rather than as a splitting of the ecosystem, because if enough of us migrate across, then others will continue to come, and then we'll build that network effect up, and we will basically be able to abandon Twitter, because Twitter, since Elon bought it, has just been down only. It's actually been, I was very bearish on it when Elon bought it. I don't know if I mentioned it at the time, but I was talking to friends about it, and I said, this is probably the worst thing that's going to happen to Twitter, and everyone was celebrating it for one reason or another, and I'm like, no, this is really, really bad. Elon has no idea how to run a social media company at all, and it's just gotten worse and worse. I mean, the latest is the fact that, I don't know if you guys saw this, but Rocketpool's Twitter account is still compromised, guys. And it has been like this for weeks. And they've had back and forth with people at Twitter. They apparently got extorted out of 3 ETH to get their account back originally, and the account got compromised again. It's a complete mess, right? And that's just one thing. But that is a huge thing, because there's so many bots and so many scammers running rampant on Twitter. And Elon said that he was going to fix that. He didn't fix that. He basically just fired everyone that had anything to do with that. And because he wanted to cut costs, because Twitter he bought for a stupid amount of money, and now he has to try and make that money back for the investors. But yeah, no, Twitter's, in my eyes, a dying platform. Farcaster is a growing platform, and it'll continue to grow from here. It's really going to be up only from here for Farcaster, and I'm just curious to see what it looks like even just a year from now. So I'm going to be using both going forward. You'll probably see more Farcaster tabs covered on the Refuel going forward. But yeah, it's great to see that, or it's great to frame it as a migration rather than as a splitting of the community, because we need to get off Twitter at this point, guys. Crypto Twitter is a complete mess. It is not something that is friendly anymore. It's not something that I have fun on anymore. I only go on there to collect stuff for the Refuel. Outside of that, when I'm on there, I actually feel myself getting upset, because there's just so much crap. It isn't a place of joy anymore, I think. And I'm sure a lot of you feel that way as well. But anyway, that's going to be it for today's longer than usual episode. I hope you all enjoyed it, and thanks for listening and watching. I'll just subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.